Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in the live webinar in the series of webinars by CBSE and educational initiatives to help our teachers and question makers in understanding the nuances of making MCQs and how to make good MCQs. Today, we have the session on mathematics, and we have a panel of experts here. Let me take a couple of minutes to introduce them. I am Avikant Bhadwaj. I will be the moderator today, and I work with educational initiatives. We have Mr. Al Hilal Ahmed Sir, who is the Joint Secretary with CBSE in academics. We also have Mr. Subhash Garg, who is the Deputy Secretary with CBSE in academics. We also have Mr. Rahul Sofat, who is the CBSE expert for today's webinar. And we have Mr. Maulik Shah, who is the expert from Educational Initiative, and they will be the panel today. So before I go ahead, I would request Hilal sir to give an opening good note on what can our teachers expect out of webinar today. If Al Hilal sir, can we have an opening note from you?
Sure. First of all, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First of all, I would like to welcome and introduce our esteemed regional director, Shri K.K. Chaudhary, who is with us, and I welcome you all on this webinar on competency-based assessment in mathematics, which is being organized as a part of a series of webinars. In fact, in the follow-up of the special assessment scheme implemented by CBSE for this year. CBSE is implementing the competency-based education, which was first mandated by an amendment in central RTE rules in the year 2017, and later on, as all of you know, NEP 2020 also called for a shift from an assessment system that is summative and primarily test rote memorization skills to one that is more regular and formative, is more competency based, promotes learning developments in our students and tests higher order skills. NEP also recommended to organize board examination twice a year by including a separate section on MCQ based questions. Now people realize that CBSE, does a lot of things and many changes very quickly. But if CBSE organizes a traditional descriptive based board examination, it will consume around 3 months of the time to complete one cycle, and it will be congregating a huge number of experts and teachers, which is not permissible in this pandemic time. So thus taking the cue from NEP, CBSE introduced special scheme of biannual board examination this year to break the one-shot nature of board examination and also to possibly mitigate the impact of pandemic. The syllabus is now bifurcated, and the first term examination, as you all know, will be MCQ based, and mathematics paper will have a total of 50 questions, and students will be required to attempt 40 MCQs as per the choice indicated, and all questions carry an equal weightage of 1 mark. As CBSE is conducting MCQ-based midterm board examination for the first time, teachers might have some concerns, and this webinar is in fact an attempt to address some of the prime concerns of teachers, especially on preparation of good MCQs and their linkages with the stipulated learning outcomes. Though this webinar is primarily of asynchronous nature, however, you can share your comments in the comment box, and selected queries may be answered in question answer session. I would also like to emphasize the point that though we try to take into account pre-webinar inputs and most of the concerns conveyed to us through various means, nevertheless, you can always approach CBSE in case you have any query even after the webinar. The webinar exclusively focuses on developing valid, reliable, and fair MCQs with stipulated LOs, and we all hope that teachers would pass this information to many of their colleagues who are not able to join us today. The YouTube link will be shared with you. I thank EI team for coming forward and collaborating with CBSE for this program, and request we come to introduce experts who will be leading this webinar. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. As we move forward, I would request Mr. Rahul Sofat to please help our participants on what they can expect from this workshop. Mr. Rahul?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It is very important to realize the vision of competency-based education and our national education policy 2020. And we say it's the shift from content-based to competency-based education. So the main stress is to involve this competency-based education and what criteria are important in it. And in this webinar, the teachers will know how to construct good multiple choice questions. That means the distinction between how to distinguish between a good MCQ and you can say not so good MCQ. And the common mistakes while constructing the MCQs will also be taken up. Not only this, how to construct good case-based questions will also be discussed. I feel it is very important for our teachers to know what are good case-based questions. And the aim basically is to learn how to make good assessment, which is valid, reliable, and at the same time fair. So that is the main emphasis.
Thank you so much, Rahul, sir. I hope that all our participants who are watching us live on YouTube right now can have some good takeaways from today's session, and that they can apply and improve the quality of the assessments that they make. First of all, I would like to start off with a very persistent question that I have always had for many years. I have seen MCQs are being used globally in assessments like JEE, NEET, even SAT, GRE, GMAT, all of these places we see MCQs being used heavily. And that makes me think, what are the different forms of MCQs that we should keep in mind? And what are some major advantages of using MCQs for assessment?
Yeah. See, basically now MCQs, it is very important. We can have MCQs in different formats of different types. One of the most important MCQ, if you see here in this slide, Raju measures the length of the shadow of the pole of 5 meters and found it to be 1.2 meters. At the same time, the same day, Raju's shadow is 0.4 meters. And then there is a figure, and if Raju's height is 1.3 meters, what is the height of the pole? So first thing I would want to make familiar is that teachers should know some technical terms. This whole question is known as an item. So including the meters and the question, this whole thing is known as an item. We call it item, not a question. Then before the options comes STEM. You can see the STEM part which is highlighted here. The STEM may contain stimuli also in the form of a figure. And after that, once the STEM is over, we are having 4 options. Now, out of these 4 options, 3 options are incorrect, or you can say wrong options or incorrect responses. Those are known as our distractors. And the right answer is known as a key. So these terminologies are important to know that how it is all about. Now, when we talk of different types of MCQs, this is the simplest form of MCQ. This is a simple MCQ in which we are asking what is the next term. Obviously, it is an AP and only one of the options is correct. We have got just one right answer in this. These type of MCQs are simple. Yeah. Next, we move to complex MCQs. Now, if you see this question or item, we would like to say, one of the angles of the isosceles triangle is greater than 90. And which of the following could be the side or lengths of the isosceles triangle? Now, see, when you see the options, we have only one. In B, we have only 2. Any one or and 2, neither 1 nor 2. So you can have more than 2 or more than 2 right answers. So these type of questions are known as complex MCQs. Now, very important types of questions which we have now are context dependent or case based items. Now, the importance here is that most of the times teachers are making questions which are word problems and they are converting them into MCQs. That doesn't solve the purpose. So the spirit of the MCQ and what MCQs will be all about, we'll be discussing at length. But here I want to just go through this question and explain you what this question is all about. There's a lighthouse, and you know the lighthouse sends flashes of light with regular fixed pattern. So there is a fixed pattern which is given, some diagram is given to us, and on this graph, alternate periods of light flashes with darkness is given. Now, first 2 seconds, if you look here, is darkness, then 1 second of light, then 1 second of darkness, and then 1 second of light. And this whole pattern or cycle is repeated. Now, see, look at the question here. The question is, which of the following could be the period of the pattern of the lighthouse? So basically, what is important here is that the student should see the text, group text of all the questions, and then he has to answer the case-based questions. In the first question, like from the diagram only, one can make out that the period will be 5, because after that, after 5 seconds, the whole cycle is being repeated. Now, if you look at the second question, how many seconds does the lighthouse send out light flashes in 1 minute? So again, once you know the period, you can just apply unitary method and obtain the answer. So what is important is the context should be realistic. Most of the times, the context we are framing the case-based questions are not realistic. And not only this, it should be interesting to the students, and it should assess some important mathematical fact, like idea of some mathematical modeling. So that these things are very important, and word problems should be avoided. Now, next, another form of MCQ are multiple choice question. You have assertion reason type questions. In this question, if you see the assertion, the surface area of the cuboid made of unit cubes decreases if the shaded unit cube is removed. This is our assertion. And then there is a reason: as volume of any solid decreases, its surface area also decreases. Now, these are thought-provoking, good questions in which there is an assertion and followed by a reason. The standard assertion reason questions have these 5 alternatives, 5 options. Both A and R are true. R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true, the second one, but R is not the correct explanation of A. And A is true, R is false, or the other way around, A is false, but R is true, or both A and R are false. So this is a standard type, but here in our examination, we are following only 4 correct answers, 4 options, 4 options followed by the, the stem. So we can, out of 1 and 2, we can take any one of them. If we don't ask that R is a correct explanation of A or not, then the first 2 will reduce to only 1, and we can easily convert it into 4 options. So these are assertion reason type. Now, advantages of multiple choice question is the next thing which we should know. The scoring is efficient, objective, and data formats are easy to analyze at large scale examination, especially in public examination where thousands of students are there. It's very efficient to get the result. Next is we can use these MCQs to diagnose the misconceptions or common errors. Listen, if you have seen that some of the misconceptions which students have, that is put in one of the distractors. The problem here is the key is written, but the distractors are just at randomly picked up. That should be avoided. So when distractors are there and some misconceptions are also in the distractors, we can analyze, because now these days in teams, or you can easily know the total number of students who are answering a particular distractor as an answer. And if we can, from that, we can diagnose it. What most of the students are thinking, what are their misconceptions, and then we can do the remedial teaching accordingly. And obviously, one very big advantage is MCQs can be used to frame questions of any cognitive level. That is, again, one more advantage here. And the disadvantages or challenges is that obviously it is difficult to create a higher level horse type of a question here. It takes time also. That is one big disadvantage. And but obviously, if you are creative and you with practice, you can make these type of questions. Cannot actually reveal what the student is thinking. See, in a subjective answer, we know what is the thought process behind the particular answer. But in an MCQ, we have just the option. We don't know the working of the what the student has done. So that way, that is one disadvantage which we have. And finally, again, as I mentioned, it is time consuming to construct a good question, and that very important distractors. Distractors should be very carefully made, and you should spend some time making distractors, and even you can write the reason for this being a distractor when you are making that item.
Thank you so much, Rahul sir. It actually makes me think what a good question would look like in a multiple choice question, right? Molly, can you walk us through some of the qualities of a good MCQ?
Sure, why not? So let's see the question on the screen. Rahulji, could you please help me if the question is fine or it has any issue? What according to you?
Here we are finding the roots of the quadratic, the competencies to find the roots of a quadratic equation and understand the nature of the roots. But the question which is framed is what is the exponent or the power of the variable? So I don't think this actually fits in, because when you are testing a competency, that either we are asking to find the roots or the nature of the roots using the discriminant. It doesn't, I don't think ये जो competency है, it is properly met by this question.
Right, absolutely. That is the point I want to drive. A question should assess a competency or a concept which is worth assessing in the first place. Such concepts are basically enduring area of understanding, which is very fundamental to learn important higher mathematics. A lot of things are there in quadratic equations which are kind of very fundamental, rather than going to test what is the degree of the quadratic equation or what is the standard form of quadratic equations. The applications, like solutions of quadratic equations, nature of roots, their applications, these are more important and enduring areas of understanding to assess on. So a good question assesses very important concept, which is kind of enduring area of understanding. Now, in this particular question, you can see that this is intended to test probability of an event. However, the way the STEM is framed is very ambiguous. There are multiple interpretations possible. What if the question is basically asking in a deck of 52 playing cards, what is the probability that you will have ace of hearts and ace of spades in that deck? Then if that is an interpretation, the answer is 1, because you will always find these two cards. If the interpretation is, if a card is drawn at random, and what is the probability that that particular card is ace of hearts as well as ace of spades? If that is interpreted, then the answer would be 0, because it can't be possible. So multiple interpretations are possible. STEM is not clear. It has a lot of ambiguity. So a good question will be unambiguous. It will have only one and one correct answer. That's very, very important characteristics. You can see on the screen what was in that question maker intending. He basically intended this. So if you change the STEM in this way, it becomes clearly unambiguous. Okay, moving on. In this particular question, it is intended that student apply, basically recall the formula of semicircles, perimeter, and answer. And the question maker has made some assumptions that in formula r is used as radius, so child will also understand and accordingly answer. That's not the way we frame questions. When we frame questions, we give complete information in the STEM, and it should be mathematically correct. What is important is what is radius r, or what is r should be well defined in the STEM in the first place. Units should be well defined. What are the units of measurement? Also, perimeter is generally talked about 2D shape. So here one should be talking in terms of the perimeter of the 2D shape traced by the protractor, mathematically speaking. So very important, our question should be mathematically well defined. Units should be mentioned clearly. So here is the way in which you can make the fix. R is clearly defined. The shape trace is shown. Units are there in the options. This is one of the question from the actual assessment paper. Student can find the value of y applying the section formula, right? But this is not correct mathematically, because if you see from the graph, for any value of y, point B will be lying on this vertical line, right? And for none of the points on this line, A, T, and B are collinear points. So mathematically, it is not possible that T will divide line segment AB internally or externally in the given ratio. So computationally, it is possible to find the value of y, but mathematical correctness is violated over here. Be aware of such kind of issues, if any, in your items as well. So question should be mathematically correct. In this particular question, a student is asked which is the smallest number divisible by each of the numbers from 1 to 10. A child might start answering by eliminating the options, something like is 10 divisible by all the numbers from 1 to 10? No, 3 doesn't divide that. 3 does not divide 100. 10 does not divide 504. So if one of the options has to be correct, it has to be 2520. Let me mark D as my response. And it happens to be the correct answer in this case. The question maker was intending to test the concept of LCM of set of numbers and common test of divisibility. But in my reasoning, I have not applied these concepts. So the item is not testing the defined testing objective as it was expected. This is happening because distractors are not strong. They need to be plausible and they need to be discerning. So very important, most important characteristics of MCQs is actually this: options need to be plausible and discerning. The way to fix that was give such kind of distractors. 5040 is also divisible by each of the numbers 1 to 10, but it is not the smallest of number. 11110 is divisible by 3. And 2250 is divisible by 9 as well. So now it becomes very difficult for a child to eliminate options. In this particular question, it is basically asking area of trapezium. Unlike traditional questions, only the required dimensions are not given. Lot more other dimensions are given. When we asked this particular question to grade 9 student in this form, only 1/3 of them were able to answer correctly. And close to 29% of the students were answering as answer option C. Now what they were doing, they were taking half of sum of 5 centimeter plus 4.29 centimeter, which is 9.2 centimeter into half, and product of this with 9.7, which is the altitude on these non-parallel sides. Now in the actual formula of area of trapezium, one needs to take sides which are parallel and altitude on those parallel sides. Also, students often find difficulty in seeing altitude which is external to a side. So when a question is asked in such a form, it gives more insight about what exactly students are learning. And if they are mechanically learning, if their understanding is superficial, it will come out in their responses. So a good question will really provide good feedback on what students are actually learning. It would help us distinguish real learning from apparent learning. Here is a question on the screen, which is application of maths in day-to-day life. It is using the context of photo editing applications, which enlarges or reduces the size of a photo as per the magnification factor provided in percentages. Now, in the first transformation, original image is resized to 80%. Subsequently, in the next transformation, it is resized and increased to 120%. Now, in doing so, students think that one will get back the original photo, because it was reduced by 20% and again now it increased to 20%. But they're not realizing that in the second transformation, the base is not the original photo. The base is the resized copy of the photo after reducing to 80%. And that misconception is very strongly coming out in our option B, where 57.1% of students were answering that. So a good question will definitely will involve good engaging context, real life context where maths is being applied. At the same point of time, it can also provide valuable insights on students' misconceptions as well. Very important that in such kind of word problems, the context should be authentic and it should be engaging, that is relatable as well. Here, the question would really stimulate child's thinking as well, because it's a new scenario where a child is applying his understanding of percentages when change of base happens, right? So that is also one of the important characteristics of good questions, not just MCQs, but any good questions. To summarize, a good question should test an important skill worth understanding. It should be error-free mathematically as well as from language errors. It should be age-appropriate. It should really test what is intended to be tested so that validity of item is holding true. It should state what is expected in clear and unambiguous terms and not left to test taker to interpret what was there in teacher's mind while framing a question. It should use clear, concise, and age-appropriate language. It should help distinguish real learning from apparent learning and give better feedback on what exactly students are learning and not learning so that appropriate remedial action or teaching can happen. It should help us diagnose common errors, misconceptions whenever relevant. Good question can be also interesting and would stimulate thinking and help discover new maths or understand the concept more deeply and better. A good question should not check for trivial or inconsequential details. And a good question should not be ideally taken from verbatim from textbooks exactly as is. That should be avoided because such questions a learner might rot learn by doing it 5 times, 10 times and producing any assessment. So these are general characteristics of any good questions one needs to be aware of.
Thank you so much, Maulik. This is very, very informative. Some of my main takeaways are that a question should always be testing the concepts that are that is very trivial. A question should always be help in identifying steps. Most importantly, what are the misconceptions that the learner. At the same time, can you explain the process that one should follow to create such good MCQs?
Yeah, absolutely. That is very important. Assuming I am a question maker and I want to form an MCQ, what I will start with blueprint of an assessment. From the blueprint, I will identify learning outcome that I need to assess. Within the learning outcome, what competency I want to assess. If a competency is slightly broad and there is a scope, I can find out what narrower concept within that competency I want to assess. Once that is done, I will identify the cognitive level at which I want to assess the competency or the concept. Is it understanding? Is it analyze? Is it create? So as per Bloom's taxonomy, I would identify the cognitive level. Then I would articulate the testing objective very clearly and sufficiently detailed out. For an example, if my testing objective is to see if students can apply the concept of surface area of a solid when the configuration of solid is changed. Also, I want to diagnose the misconception the surface area of a solid decreases if its volume decreases. Now, with this target in mind, I will frame an item. Okay, so I will use simple and easy to comprehend age-appropriate language to frame the question. Let's say I frame this particular question. Now comes the forming of distractors. Here, I would put myself into a shoe of a student and try to solve this question from that lens, right? So, and then think about what all different or reasoning I might use if I don't know the correct answer. Incorrect thinking that a child might have, what kind of misconceptions I'm seeing when I reflect on the student work on such a concept. So I can find out, I can see that there is a possibility that students might answer as equal to. They are seeing that the two sides which are grayed out will be taken up, but now the face opposite to that of the neighboring cube will get exposed and that will contribute to surface area. So two new faces get exposed and two faces are removed. So net balance is the same. There is no change in the surface area. If a child thinks like that, he will answer as A. If a child thinks that since the cube is taken out, the two grayed out faces will no longer contribute to surface area. So surface area will reduce by 2 centimeter. If that is the reasoning, he will go for answer B, answer option B. A child might think that the entire cube is removed, so all its 6 faces no longer contribute to surface area, and hence surface area of a new solid will reduce by 6 centimeter. In that case, he will answer as C. 2 is definitely the correct answer and the key. So I frame distractors which are very plausible. It has clearer logic. I recommend any question maker to clearly articulate logic for distractors as well. There should nowhere be written as random or without any rational distractor is put up. That's not a good practice. So once we do that and the question is made, I recommend the question maker reviews his or her own item against some checklist. So here is a checklist I would, review my question against. Is my question mathematically clear and clear single correct answer? Am I assessing important concepts identified? Is it enduring area of understanding? Is STEM clearly unambiguous? Does it have additional irrelevant text? Is it easy to read? Is it effective in testing the intended testing objective and competency? Here, I would put myself in the shoe of a child and think from that lens. Am I given all the given information? If I try to eliminate options, is that possible? And defeat the testing objective? No. Then go past. Are options effectiveness in trapping misconceptions? Yes, which is happening in the previous case. Is cognitive skill aligned with what I have planned? Yes. Is the intended difficulty of the item the way I want? I can look at my solutions steps and the reasoning involved and go back and see whether the difficulty estimate that I put up is really holding true or not. So such kind of checklist should be very handy in reviewing one's own question, and the practice of putting yourself in a shoe of a student, completely in the shoe of a student and not at all think about from the perspective of a test maker, will help us come up with good MCQs. Also, very important is to make a note of the time taken to solve a question. Often we might end up framing a question which can take more time, and there is a possibility of reducing calculations or reducing that kind of effort, considering MCQs are worth 1 mark, right? So having said this, I also recommend, if possible, have your peer teacher review your questions. Maybe after a day or two, you review your own question if you're reviewing yourself, so that you can really come out of the frame of test maker and go into shoe of a child. So having said that, I would ask Rahulji how he goes about the question and shed light to the audience on how they can frame good MCQs.
Now, one very important thing which Maulik has said, that whenever you are framing a question, look out for, is it worth the core competency which we want to assess? That is the most important. And that enduring area of understanding is very, very important. What you want to assess, that is very crucial. Now, this is a simple, we can frame simple MCQs also. Now, you see in this, generally, we have to find UV, and the misconception is that UV upon 14 is equal to 3 by 4. Kind of 3 upon this whole thing, PU upon PR. The item gets affected.
Right. I also want to add that in my experience, I've seen often cases where novice question makers would not frame well-defined STEM, leave out some details, especially units of measurement may be missed out, key variables used may be missed out. Distractors definitely need to be plausible, and the practice of putting logic for distractors is very helpful, I've found. Of other mistakes I've seen is sometimes they force fit a context into mathematical idea and make a question. So context or real life situation needs to be authentic. If any information or data being used should be really authentic and not contrived. Question also sometimes do not assess the intended testing or not be mindful about elimination strategy at times. So these are the common mistakes.
Normal MCQs. What are some of the qualities that make a case-based study MCQ a really good quality MCQ? And how does one go about making such good MCQs?
Very important question. To realize the vision of competency-based assessments, case-based questions are something I find very interesting to realize that vision, because it gives you a space where a child is applying a concept which is part of day-to-day life or being applied in real life in an unknown situation, and demonstrates his competency of mathematical thinking. So let me give you an example of this particular case. I was visiting London Eye, which is a giant Ferris wheel in London, and sitting in the inside of the capsule. What I realized is this was a beautiful idea for making a question, and I framed a question which is this, so what would be my height if I'm sitting in the capsule from the ground when the revolutions are happening? Very interesting and intriguing to me at that point of time. And when I converted it in MCQ, I put it in this form. So Here, a question is also having good plausible distractors in the sense that a child might think that since a person here, Dimpy, is moving in a circular direction, circular, it traces a circle, then her heights would also vary in that form. They are failing to realize that as per this graph in D, a child will be at, Dimpy will be at different heights at the same time, which is not possible. Also, a student is supposed to reason out that the Ferris wheel's diameter is not changing with each revolution. It is remaining constant. So the slopes cannot go on increasing. The V shape cannot go on increasing like that. And with the same reasoning, this kind of curves also need not go become less in amplitude, because diameter of Ferris wheel also is not reducing. So then they can think that students are, the motion will be, the height will vary in this form. It is not expected that they realize it is sinusoidal or a parabolic nature of the curve. It's not important to assess on that. Even if a child applies this kind of reasoning, it was okay. So we framed such a question and made it. So through this, what I want to realize is a good case-based question will be relating maths to real life in the first place. The context which one uses should be real life based, not contrived. All the information given over here are realistic. It really takes 40 minutes to complete one revolution because its main objective is sightseeing and gives beautiful view of a London city. So all these things are taken care of while arriving at the case and framing MCQs based on that. So again, repeating the point, the question is also stimulating and also testing very important idea of maths, which is math modeling. So, context needs to be authentic. Context needs to be relatable. Every child would understand what a Ferris wheel is about. If not, the images are providing the visualization which child can go through and go about answering the question. So this is what is very important to one of the most important characteristics of case-based MCQs. Let me now come to another example. This is actual example from PISA International Assessment and an item which was released in 2006 paper. Sir has already described beautifully the two questions, PISA questions based on that. Fine, I'm not going into it. The question on the right side is a question based on this case. I'm positioning it in this way as a question maker. In this question, student is asked to find out distance the large cargo ship will travel in 1 hour from lighthouse when it is moving at a speed of 60 knots. So question maker has ensured that appropriate unit is used, mile or knots are used to measure speed. So that is being taken care of in the question. And, it's basically testing application of distance, time, speed formula. But so the context of the group text is engaging, it is grade appropriate. However, there is an issue with this particular question in, positioning as group-based MCQ, case-based MCQ. One of the most important condition that is violated is you can answer this question firstly without using any information on the left side. The key mathematical idea in the group text was patterns in flashes. Nowhere that idea is connected. Only connection made is lighthouse and sea. This is something I would say force-fitting of the context and not really important for the question. That should not happen. Secondly, it is also giving some, so speed of large cargo ship cannot be more than 100 kilometers per hour, right? So one should be taking care of such kind of things as well, that whatever data is there, it should be realistic. Information should be realistic. So these two are one of the important characteristics. Now to summarize, I would say related to the case, the qualities of good cases are, they should be based on authentic, realistic context. It should be informative and engaging, relatable. It should not be so that only students of particular geography or group will find it easy to answer and others will be at loss. Then the principle of fairness is violated. If a context is not relatable, a child might not be able to answer, even he knows the maths involved in that. So that is important. It should have less text to comprehend ideally. And also it should be ideally unfamiliar situation, not taken exactly from the textbook, so that it's a new situation in which child is applying his mathematical understanding and demonstrating it. There are some qualities related to questions which are based on case. Most important one is it should be related to the given case. Question should also require information from the group text to answer. This is one of the fundamental check. Secondly, question should be of varying difficulty and assessing different aspect of concepts or maths. Not the same idea, same competency, same testing objective needs to be tested and come up with many questions based on that. That's not good. Context in the question also should be authentic and realistic, as we saw in the previous case. So that's how I would say these are the qualities one should ensure.
Can I make a point here?
Go
Absolutely.
ahead, sir.
Yeah, and actually what I have seen is that very important point mentioned by Maulik is that whenever you are framing the questions which follow in case-based studies, all of them should be related to the context or the data given. Now, what I have seen, one of the flaw in some of the what you call case-based study questions, which I have seen is first and either one or two questions are from the context, from the data provided, and next are all independent questions. So that should be avoided.
Sure, thanks. Now I would like to go about narrating how I, source good questions and good cases to frame such case-based MCQs. So let me revisit the same question, right? I already, shared how my journey of thinking through and coming up with this particular question. So that's fine. Now you have probably seen such a question in an assessment. And it is possible that you can frame different question ideas using the same context, right? So you can go about doing that. I just framed one question which was about the height. There can be variety of different maths associated with the same idea. For an example, one can assess, where will the passenger be after 30 minutes, after 25 minutes? 4 points can be traced on the figure, and a question can ask what could be the position of the passenger. It could also be what could be the vertical height after 20 minutes if the person has started from the base. It could also be how much of radial distance a person has traveled in 30 minutes. Different kinds of maths you can associate with this situation and bring out question ideas. Also, you can think about where all you see uniform circular motion. Example, you might see such a uniform circular motion in movement of a clock hand, minute hand, or a second hand of a clock, big tower clock. That could be your case on which you can frame different questions, right? So look for such similarities in cases and similarities of mathematical ideas, and you can go about varying some of the variables and make new questions out of that. In this particular case, simple harmonic motion and uniform circular motion has a lot of similarities. So you can also get good sources which involve simple harmonic oscillator or any such idea. For an example, instead of this Ferris wheel in an amusement park, a big swing is there, which moves with a uniform speed, right? So that is uniform, SHO, simple harmonic oscillator, simple harmonic motion, SHM. Now one can ask what could be the height if I am sitting in that ride from the ground, how it will vary, how much is the horizontal distance that I am traveling in one complete oscillation. Different possibilities are there. If a child is swinging or I am sitting on a swing in a playground and swinging, what is how my height varies from the ground, right? If I am swinging speedily or increasing my speed and amplitude as well, how the nature of height will change. If I am slowing down, how will it change? All different possibilities are there. And this is how you can have variations in cases, variations in questions, and frame many other ones. If you could have thought some other question just based on this, put down on the chat in YouTube. We would love to hear innovative ideas on the same. I had one more idea and would just like to share to the reader, which is assertion reasoning question. I also thought that instead of the reference of frame as the ground, what if I choose the reference of frame as horizontal line passing through the center of the Ferris wheel. And now I compare my height sitting in the capsule against that imaginary horizontal line. Will the nature of the graph, the previous one, change in that case? No. So I make a statement which is assertion. The shape of the graph doesn't change. It remains the same as that from the ground with graph shifting downwards. And I'm also putting a reasoning statement as this happens because imaginary horizontal line is at a constant distance from the ground. That's why I can assert the previous statement. And I've framed assertion, reason, question out of beautiful context that we had arrived at, right? So give wings to your creativity. The process of creating new maths or associating new maths is really beautiful journey that you can go through while making case-based MCQs. Now let me go into another familiar example sir had already discussed about. So one of the important aspect of case-based MCQs is to frame MCQs which are of varying cognitive levels. So let's say this was a case identified. Here also I can have variations, by the way. I can change this pattern. I can change the representation of this pattern and ask similar questions, right? Instead of light flash from lighthouse, it could be signature of aeroplane flying, where it gives this kind of pulses of flash with unique signature, right? Another variety of context in which one can derive cases and have good MCQs based on that. Now, assuming that this is the case that I have arrived at, I will take you through how we frame questions of varying cognitive levels and assessing different mathematical ideas. So we can probably start with very basic question. In this particular case, it is about interpretation of the given graph or the given visual. So, at which interval the light will flash for a second. So among the given intervals, the interval of 9 to 10 seconds is the intended correct answer. So you start with a very basic one, then you can get into slightly higher complexity, which is basically asking for the period of the pattern. It's a original PISA question. Maybe I may have changed some distractors. Then you can also ask a slightly difficult question saying how many seconds does the lighthouse send out light flashes in 1 minute? So more analysis of the pattern and slightly more difficult question based on that. If you don't want to frame this, you can also assess the same idea in a different way. Instead of asking for the sum of seconds of light flashes in 1 minute, you can ask for instances of 2-second intervals of darkness in 1 minute. So that's another idea. Ensure that you don't ask both the questions in the same assessment because the core idea around the pattern being tested is the same. So beware of that. And then even on a slightly higher difficulty, you can frame a question which is not exactly the same pattern, slightly different pattern to analyze. So in this case, a ship is approaching the lighthouse and it spots the lighthouse light flash for the first instance. From there onwards, how many more seconds will it take to receive the 100th light flash? Let's say a device in the ship was recording that. Then after how many more seconds will it receive the 100th light flash? So now the pattern to be analyzed is slightly different. It starts from this LD, LDD, and one needs to find out, 100th term will be what, and accordingly answer. One of the beautiful aspect of mathematics is looking for similarities in structures, right? So here also one can assess that particular competency and skill. This particular pattern, which is of the form DDLDL, I'm definitely not talking about DDLG movie. This pattern can also be represented using letters in that form, right? DDLDL, and that pattern repeats. Instead of that, one can represent the same pattern in the form of 1, 0. 1 second of light flash is represented by 1. 0 indicates 1 second of darkness. So the pattern will look like 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, and that will keep on repeating. So another MCQ around the idea of similarity in structures and you could see how, each of the mathematical ideas being assessed are slightly different and they vary in cognitive levels. That's how one goes about making a good, case-based MCQs. I would also like to share one example very briefly. We already discussed this context of image editing application and resizing as a transformation. This was also helpful to capture misconception. But on a slightly higher mathematical idea, which is the enlargement as a transformation and representing scale factor in percentages, is beautifully coming out or associated with this context, right? So one can frame such a question around it. Which of these series of transformations, starting with the original photo of the Taj Mahal, will result in the original sized photo back? Students might think that whichever option has 100% as the last will result into the original photo. So that in that way, the distractors have logic for the same. Here for C, one may think that it is reduced by half and further reduced by half, which is 1/4. Now to get back, I need to increase by 400%. No, but again, I don't want to share what is the correct answer over here. Think about it. Leave as comment in your chat box in YouTube, and yeah, I will move on. I enjoyed answering the question or even framing the question itself. A lot of good maths associated with it. Okay, now let me talk about some of the other situations in which you can find potential sources of cases. Definitely physical phenomena, that is applications of maths in physics, are very rich sources. One of the books, one of my favorite, is Fundamentals of Physics by Resnick and Halliday. You can find a lot of good context and you maybe convert that into case for MCQs. Applications of maths in sports also have good are good sources. Here I would like to quote 3030 Eklavya webinar series by CBSE is kind of rich source of such potential cases as well. Sir beautifully talked about Neeraj Chopra's throw and how it was thrown at angle of 36 degrees with the horizontal to get the maximum range covered by the javelin. Very intriguing concept and the ideas that he discussed in that webinar. So definitely these are good resources and sources. Then you can have plan of a tournament. You can have applications of maths and scientific principles in optimizing one's own performance as a sport person. These could be context. You can have market transactions, best buys, best plans, taxes. Computation of income tax is definitely computationally difficult for many adults. Why not have case based on that? Anyways, these students will become an adult and apply their maths and mathematical understanding in computing those income taxes and all, right? Computing GSTs. So why not give those realistic, authentic cases as well? EMIs, discount rates, all that, are rich sources. Maths in day-to-day life, amazing source of good cases that one can find. Keep your eyes open, keep your camera ready. Here in this particular case, I am often find with a situation where my phone memory will be full and I need to delete files to free up memory spaces. I see such kind of beautiful graphical representation and I can associate percentages, ratio and proportions with this and frame many good MCQs based on such realistic context. Apart from that, I also end up thinking about how long my car will go without refueling, especially when I'm on highways. How speedily I need to drive my car so that I reach the destination in time and not miss out the sightseeing place that I intend to when I'm on a journey. Itinerary, all these are very rich sources of maths. Even while jogging, pedometer readings, cycling, all these are very good context in which you can have MCQs. Advertisements, newspaper articles, again, rich sources, especially for authentic data and graphical data interpretation questions. I also find science magazines like Nature, Safari very intriguing. They bring out different aspects of science, climate change, ecology, evolution, growth of coronavirus, model which predicts that. All those are beautifully put out in such kind of scientifically rich blog articles and magazines. seating arrangements in an auditorium. Whenever I saw this diagram, I was in awe of it. Lots of possible questions based on this AP. And yeah, good sources like good international assessments, PISA are also good stimuli of, good cases that you can derive from. Maps, especially how taxi fares are calculated, distances are calculated using Google Maps, using the idea of scale. All these are again rich sources. Layouts, floor plans of building for area of composite shapes, estimation of areas, and 3D visualization, spatial reasoning. All these are rich mathematical concepts associated with them. And time zones, international travel, itinerary, all these are again rich sources. Coordinate systems, they are used slightly different in computer softwares. So you can ask how the equation of line will look like in a software, which is a graphical one, when origin is at the top left, and when you go down, you actually have negative y coordinates. And if you go to the left, you have positive y coordinates. From this kind of coordinate system, how will you represent the line, which in a usual coordinate system is represented by, let's say, x plus y equals 0. Beautiful ways in which you can do it and associate maths and have different concepts. Slopes, all this can also be tested. Warfare to locate targets. The coordinate systems used often is latitude, longitude, and even further down in minutes and all, which can involve the idea of proportional and a lot of good ideas, estimation questions. Board games, card games are also rich sources. Clinical trials, simulations, thought experiments, the experiments that we do in lab, all these are also rich sources when we collect data and check whether hypothesis holds true and all that. Just one thing I would say, wherever we apply maths in day-to-day life and solve real world problems, all these are potential good sources of cases. And then when you start associating maths with that, you can come up with beautiful case-based questions.
Thank you so much, Maulik, for sharing all of these very informative sources. This just transported me back while I was preparing for all of these competitive exams, and even when I was teaching in a classroom and trying to make assessments, keeping in mind this real context, and authentic context in mind. But all this while, as I was making questions, I was always wondering that by adding these case-based type questions or authentic context, um, does that affect the reliability and the validity of my assessment? Does that affect it anyway?
Wonderful question, by the way. I would like Sir Rahul ji to just talk about few of the things before I take up and show how these some of these aspects which I talked about earlier, irrelevant difficulty, compromises reliability and validity. Sir ji, could you please explain?
In fact, these are very important aspects. Reliability basically means that test can produce consistent, repeatable, or replicable results. Like if today a class is given a test without imparting further knowledge, after some time again the test is conducted, then a lot of variation should not be there, or to same level of students somewhere else. So that is reliability. Now, validity basically means the degree to which the test measures what is claimed to measure. So what we intend to measure, that is actually being measured or not. What you call bias should not be there. So these are important aspects of any test, or for that matter, any item. Otherwise, the validity and reliability will get affected.
Absolutely. So I would like to show a question from one of the assessments we had for grade 5. It was assessing the idea of fractions and how base whole changes. So, we saw the data as this: 27% answered as A, 18.4% answered as D. what was intriguing when we looked at the student response data was PBC value, which is point biserial coefficient. Actually, this is a parameter of discrimination in classical theory of item responses. So in that, what we find is PBC of incorrect answer option is 0.198, which is more than that for correct answer. This is unusual pattern. Usually correct answer will have greater PBC value because it is correlation coefficient correlating chances of answering correctly compared to the total score in a test. So we were wondering what is wrong with the question. We went back to classrooms, we interviewed students, and what we found was there are some brighter students who knew the concept, sorry, but they shared that the whole over here is basically 12 fruits, even after removal of fruits, and they've answered accordingly. So, but that was not intended, and the intended correct answer was C. So we had to drop this particular item from scoring because validity was getting compromised over here. It was not exactly testing the proficiency in fractions, and within that the competency of change of whole and arriving at a fraction when that is happening, right? So, you know, the item is not exactly measuring that particular concept or competency, and hence we had to drop it. The easy fix was just to say that 1/4 of the remaining fruits in the bowl are apples. When we clarified that, then we had our own experience, you know, that this was the flaw. So very important to take care of, framing in the STEM. Otherwise, we will end up with invalid items. Now I will get into, how I talk, basically, if some of these kind of smaller points are not taken care of, that compromises validity and at times reliability of item and hence the whole assessment as well. All these points which we discussed earlier are actually best practices which will help us with coming up with an assessment which is very highly reliable, highly valid and fair. So definitely all this hold true. Apart from that, there are some other best practices or nuances which we need to take care of. In this particular case, two dice are rolled. Instead of me speaking, let me ask the panelists over here. What about this particular question? Rahulji, is there any issue with the question?
I find the competency is to assess the probability of an event. And when two dice are rolled, what is the probability of the sum of the numbers on the top is Mersenne prime. So the problem is Mersenne prime is not a core concept or competency which one needs to be tested when you are testing the probability. So student will not be able to solve even if he is good in probability because of he doesn't know what is Mersenne prime. So I think these questions should be avoided.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that should be.
I thought I wanted to make a question which is involving unfamiliar context and come up with innovative question idea. In my enthusiasm, I made such a question, but I failed to realize that it is unintended. Though I don't intend, it is testing the idea of Mersenne primes. And Mersenne primes are not the ideas which every learner of grade 10 is expected to know of. It is a beautiful property about primes, but all of students need not know of that. So what I should have done is give the definition of Mersenne prime in the STEM itself and then ask the question, or give some of the Mersenne primes already in the STEM saying, basically primes which are of the form 2 raised to n minus 1 are Mersenne primes, and 3, 7, 15, 31 are some of the Mersenne primes, and then ask the same question. Then I am really testing the concept or competency of probability of an event, and my item is having the content validity. It is assessing the intended competency then. So be mindful about it. In general, assessing the multiple skills is good, but it should not assess a non-core understanding if that is the case. Assessing a single skill will give greater diagnostic value. If a student has not answered this question, we would not come to know was that because of lack of probability concepts or was that because of lack of idea of what are Mersenne primes. So, that's why it's good to focus on assessing single skill, especially for formative assessment, when the idea is to decide what remediation should be taken up and what are the learning gaps to be fixed. So assess the concept intended, Now in this question, question maker has tried beautifully to assess the idea of pairs of simultaneous linear equations and their solution by providing information combined with geometrical ideas. But if I am a student, the way I will solve is this. A plus B has to be 12. So which are the options which has A plus B as 12? Okay, only A and C has that. So B and D are ruled out. Now A minus B has to be 8, which means A needs to be greater than B. Which of the option has the difference as 8 and A greater than B? Only option A. Now, in reasoning that way, I arrive at my answer as option A. Avikant, did I really use the idea of simultaneous pairs of linear equations and their solution while
Not
answering
at
this
all.
way?
Yeah, not at all. Because you could easily eliminate three options just by looking at the figure without actually solving any equation.
Right. So that is a mistake a question maker has made over here. And also another important mistake a question maker makes is he is using the labels A and B, which are actually option labels. Such kind of things adds to cognitive load and adds to irrelevant difficulty, as researched by psychometricians, and they have come up with guidelines for item making. So these are the points I am talking from, the guidelines that psychometricians have put up. So ensure that the testing objective is not compromised by if a child employs a strategy of elimination of options. Also ensure do a check as a student, as I told earlier, and avoid use of variables and labels PQRS ABCD to label geometric figures, all that, which are actually option labels. Okay, now look at the two questions. Both are assessing the same idea, identifying geometrical shape based on properties. Some of the properties are given. Here also it is given, the same information is given for the question on the right as well. Which question would you prefer to answer, Avikant?
I would clearly prefer to answer the second one because then I don't have to read a long passage about the figure itself. I can just simply look at the figure and answer it.
Absolutely. Just without getting into what mathematical ideas are involved, you feel like reading less text and answering based on that, right? Same is the psychology of students as well. These two are the actual examples or questions from a research study by psychometricians, and what they found was uh, this particular item on the left side had an accuracy of 78% compared to the item on the right, which had the accuracy of 88%, 10% more accuracy. So which particular question is having greater validity of assessing the intended concept, Avikant?
Clearly, the second one would be more accurate
Right.
because it does not put any cognitive load on the child.
Absolutely. Same idea is there, right? But the item on the right side gives better picture about the proficiency level of a child in the intended concept, which was being assessed. So be mindful about this. The good amount of text to read should be avoided, and definitely provide information in an efficient way through image. So use image effectively. Okay. Similarly, on the same point, definitely one would like to answer the second form of the same question, right? Both are assessing the same concept, same idea, just that they are framed differently. You would like to answer the second form, right? And the same reasons, less text to read. Here, a lot of text is repeating in distractors and correct answer key, which you can bring it in the stem itself by reframing it. So, and that's how you can reduce text as well practically. So we recommend, this wherever such kind of possibility exists, do that. Here, this is an actual question from an assessment. If I'm a child who doesn't know the answer, what should I guess? Maybe one. Maybe one because one is already there in the stem. Maybe one because probably the associated concept that test maker would be trying to assess is sine square of theta plus cos square theta is 1 for any theta. So if that, I know of that relation in the chapter of trigonometry, so maybe the answer is 1. Let me take that. I do that now and I have answered it. And that was, now in this particular case, that is the correct answer. So is the feedback that you're getting valid, that I'm proficient in the concept which was being assessed? No. So content validity of the item is compromised by having answer in this form. So avoid correct answer, which is one of the numbers in the STEM. Also do not have correct answer which stands out, as it happens in this particular case of probability based question. Only option which has probability represented in fractional form is option C. Students would know that probability is generally represented in terms of fractions. So look at that option which has fraction, and in spite of not knowing the event probability of the given event, he will be marked as correct and be termed as proficient in the concept, which is actually not the case. In this particular case of question, what I want to bring out is there are overlapping options. If correct answer is D, then C is also correct answer. If that is not the case, then it is easy to eliminate one of the two options. Also, -1 giving that as an option is ridiculous, because child would know at this level that probability cannot be negative. So avoid overlapping options, avoid having absurd wrong options which are easy to eliminate. All these practices will lead to greater validity of the item. Also, okay, this is a question. I was very enthusiastic. IPL is going, cricket fever is on. Let me make a question involving the context of game of cricket. Already, I talked about that one should derive good context from sports. So let me, make an attempt in framing math question based on cricket. So Avikant, can you tell me what are the different possibilities of scoring a run on a given ball?
Yeah, I mean, like if I try to recall correctly, I can score 0, I can score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can also score 7 by hitting a sixer on a no ball. I can actually score a 8 as well by running 3 runs, and then on an overthrow the ball hits the helmet behind the wicket keeper. So I think from 0 to 8, 9 possible scenarios are there.
I myself never thought about this possibility of 8 or even 7. I thought it's just 0 to 6. So also, can I assume that every child in every part of India would know of these scoring options or these possibilities of scoring runs?
I don't think so, because unless you're actually following cricket very closely and you're aware of the laws of cricket, I don't think it's very common to expect people to know all of this.
Right. Now, this knowledge of different possibilities of scoring run is required to answer this particular question. And if I'm a child who knows the probability concept very well, but since I'm in Kolkata where football is more common sport and I don't follow cricket, I don't know what are the possibilities that exist, and hence I cannot answer this. So you're being unfair to me in the first place. Your item is not testing the idea of concept of probability, because, and it in a way tests the concept, the knowledge of game of cricket, right? So one should avoid this. In an attempt to make context, it should ensure that it doesn't have any bias and it should be relatable to every child. Okay, here there are 4 names, all the 4, so between 2 items, the only variation is the change in names. Minor point I want to bring out is for, equity thing, considering the social fabric of India, we should mix names which are of different genders and also of different religions. Especially when you're framing questions for lower grades, a child who is girl child may want to go for girl as an option when she doesn't know, or, and she may hit accidentally the correct answer. So avoid these kind of possibilities, and it's a good practice to follow. Secondly, whenever you are using good authentic data to frame questions, I actually encourage doing that. Do that, but cite the source. So here COVID is going on. This site, John Hopkins University, is very actively tracking growth of COVID cases. And I use this particular graph to frame interpretation, inference-based questions on that. It's an unfamiliar graph, relatable situation, right? But if you notice, I've also cited the source and acknowledge their IP rights. So that's a good practice to do. And I would say, I encourage using authentic data. So now, I would like Rahulji to just throw one of the important aspects of assessment. It needs to assess concept at different cognitive levels, and one of the aspect of competency-based assessment is to assess a competency at varying cognitive levels as well. So here it is illustrated beautifully for a concept of surface area. Rahulji, can you just throw some light on it?
Yeah, this actually I want to just explain how different cognitive levels items can be framed. Now, if you are asking to find the surface area when the radius is r units and vertical height is at units, it is a simple remember question, a recall type question. Now, when you give the values of diameter and vertical height, it changes into understanding type question. And in applying, it is a higher skill. So, like you see in the figure, there is a cylinder and the circumference of the cross section is given. So the child has to apply the given the circumference, then finding the height, and suppose it is divided into two parts or whatever like question is framed, then this will come under applying to find the surface. Next is the analysis or analyze. In analyze, a hollow cylinder is there. It is cut along a straight line. And then when you open it, obviously you will get a parallelogram. Then you can ask students like what can be determined, what with the given information, what you can find out. See, we are given the diameter and we are given the height of the cylinder, and this obliquely, if it is cut, can you find PQ? Can you find PS? Can you find the area of the parallelogram? Can you find the distance between PQ and RS? So all these things come under the analysis to analyze. And if you want to increase the degree of difficulty higher, and the same question will shift to evaluate. If like you have a hollow cylinder and it is cut along a straight line, not a straight line, if it is cut along a slant line and open, you will get a parallelogram again. Then what will be the area? Will the area of this parallelogram will be greater than the area if it is cut along a vertical line? And you have to justify, you have to give reasoning for it. So that is evaluation. And the highest order is creativity. I do agree that in creativity questions are very difficult to assess in MCQs because they are one marker and out of box thinking should be there. So here in if you want to make it take it to that level, then when the slant cut is made in a hollow cylinder, you will get a sheet which is a parallelogram. What can you say about the area of the parallelogram? In what two conditions, which two cuts that particular parallelogram will be congruent? So those type of questions which you have to give justification and higher critical thinking is involved. So
Yeah.
I will just say that all the questions can be framed, and these are how you can change the cognitive levels. And generally, what is seen is the once the questions are made, and then that cognitive skill is put into it. That should be avoided. You first see what you have to make, what item you have to make, and then you make the item. What cognitive level? That is very important.
Absolutely. Thanks, sir, for beautifully articulating that. Now, I would just like to, pinpoint to some of the practices that one should do for good balanced assessment. Once you have good assessment items, you compile them into good assessment. While doing that, ensure that these two mistakes are not being made. One is that answer key or correct answer option should be well distributed among the 4 options. This one is correct. Only having correct answer loaded towards option C is not correct. So this kind of thing should be avoided. Also have questions of varying difficulty level so that you can discriminate well between low ability students as well as high ability students. Estimate the time that is required to complete time-bound test and ensure that the time given is sufficient. So yeah, these things need to be taken care of. For the interest of teachers, I would just put up everything that we talked about as guidelines. You can take a screenshot of the same. Some of the points I already talked about. One point I want to bring out is options should be arranged in increasing or decreasing order of numbers or word length to avoid guessing. There is no visual cue then, and this also reduces cognitive load. Only exception is when you are having options as days of the week or months of the year, where you will go with chronological order. Also good to keep calculation simple, restrict questions with negative forms. Ideally, if at all you're using negative form, then highlight that negative term not. Definitely avoid double negative forms where not is there in STEM, as well as the correct answer is of the form none of the given numbers, none of the options. This kind of double negative form should be strictly avoided. Um, yeah, better to restrict use of options like none of the above, all of the above, unless they are capturing a misconception. Because at times they make it easy to eliminate some of the distractors and come in a way of uh, having good valid item. Maths variables should always be in italics. Use SI notations, and yeah, follow these guidelines. Express creatively your question making skill. Enjoy the maths associated. Discover new mathematical ideas while framing questions. Taking care of some of the nuances. I would say that if you follow the process that we illustrated, you will find the journey quite easy. And the exercise of reviewing each other's questions will not only help you as a question maker, but even while giving feedback, you will notice these points, and this is also very important real life skill. So I encourage doing a lot of these things. And with this here, I close. I just also
Thank you
want
so
to add
much.
that making such questions is basically creativity. It basically comes with practice. So practice making questions even for formative assessments as much as possible, even for the end of the day, end of the session assessment question that you put up, because it's very easy to score, and that way you will practice, you will put all these principles into practice and remember. So this webinar is just a journey that you have started, and it doesn't end there. You are basically bringing those principles into your day-to-day teaching, learning, and teaching learning practices. We hope we have provided valuable information to all of you. All the best. Let's realize the vision of competency-based education and change the way students are learning.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Maulik. I think like this was definitely helpful for me personally, and I have taken a screenshot of this slide. I hope other teachers who are watching this on YouTube have taken it. In case you want to revisit the content of this webinar, you can always come back to CBSC's YouTube channel and see the recording of this webinar later on. In the meanwhile, we would like to highlight that there is a feedback come interest form that is linked in the description of this webinar. So please take some time at the end of this webinar to fill that up. It is mentioned in the description of this webinar on YouTube. As we go on to the Q&A from our audience in the on the YouTube, the most common question that I have seen coming up there is around assertion and reasoning question. So many people have asked that, like we spoke about assertion and reason, but they are not part of the sample papers from that they have gotten from CBSE. So they are confused if the assertion reason question are going to be part of the term one paper or not. Subhash Garg sir, do you want to clarify that for our audience here? Subhash sir, Al Hilal sir, or Rahul sir, do you want to clarify whether they will be part of the term one paper or not?
As far as I know that in the first term, reason assertion questions are not there. Otherwise, some notification would have come. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
So
in the first
from our understanding, it is not part of the term one paper. We covered this in part as part of this session to show all the different types of MCQs so that we don't leave out anything. If the assertion reasons questions were part of the term one paper, we would have definitely gone deeper in the understanding of those type of questions as well. So Varsha, do you want to add anything on that?
No. It's okay.
Thank you so much. We have a couple more questions that are very interesting. Let me take that one. We got a question from Sapna Kaur. She's asking if, in a case study type of question, can multiple topics be judged as in the same case-based study type question? As in, like, can we have a question on sequences and on polynomials both in the same type, same case study type question? Is that allowed? Anybody can take this up from the panel. Subhash sir, Alilal sir, Rahul sir, Maulik.
Sorry, could you please reframe the question to me?
Okay, so Sapna Kaur is asking if in a case study type question, can we have multiple topics or multiple learning objectives judged or assessed in the same case study based question? So, as in like with a case study,
Yeah,
can we
yeah.
have 5 different questions assessing different concepts?
Absolutely. Why not? If that is a possibility, one can always do that. As far as one is using the information in the group text, common text, and the
I
questions
think
are
that is the
based on that,
purpose of
it
the
is
case
okay.
study only. That it should be multiple intelligence should be asked. Yes.
Different cognitive level questions can be there, but they should be all related to the group text. Like and the group text should mainly consist of one sole content.
Rahulji, actually, the issue is that the person is asking about whether different concepts, I mean, not about different cognitive levels or different concepts can be tested through a same case-based context.
Yes, sir. According to me, probability question can be asked.
Yes,
The other
yes.
question could be on
As
quadratic
far as
equation
I
or
am concerned,
quadratic.
I think yeah, it's possible because, but the most important thing is again the learning outcomes which are non-negotiables. And as a good teacher, you should have planned. You must have kept so much of learning outcomes to be tested out of this case-based study question. And if your questions are linking up with your learning outcomes, it's good enough. I mean, you can ask any learning outcome can be linked with the case-based questions.
Thank you so much, Harilal sir. If I may just summarize it in 1 or 2 sentences, what sir and everybody else said is that you can have multiple uh, different concepts asked in the same case study based question as long as they align with the learning outcomes that are mentioned in the curriculum, and also as long as they are the data or the information of that is present
Bravo,
in
Nuruddin.
the context uh, given of the case study. So as long as it is all the information is present in the case study common text and it is aligned with the learning objectives, we can ask that. Another question that we have here is that don't you think there's a possibility of scoring less marks uh, than expected because distractors would look very similar? Writing a subjective paper was better as marks for steps were given out to the child. So this person is asking with MCQs, there's a possibility of scoring less marks because the distractors would look very, very similar and a child may mistakenly choose a wrong option and would
I
not
would
be
rather.
awarded marks for process.
Right. I would say go by the principle of assessment. What is the objective of the assessment? To give the feedback, firstly, to measure the knowledge of a child and give the feedback what exactly are the proficiency levels in the concept. That's the core idea of any assessment. Now, whichever type of question gives you maximum insight about that, that is the best question type for that particular scenario. In this particular case, basically the principle of MCQ is also that you have a STEM. A child should arrive at the answer just by give information in the STEM. He solves the problem, he has answer ready with him, and now he has to find his answer from one of the 4 options. That is why we need to have distractors which is more likely to have answer of a child. If he doesn't find his answer in one of the options, he will randomly guess, and that way validity or that will be compromised. So it is distractors are made discerning and made very strong. They end up basically diagnosing learning gaps or misconceptions and provide greater value, which is where exactly child needs intervention, and can his learning can be improved. So in that scenario, go by this thing. Like I would personally say MCQs are good questions if that happens. If that gives you greater diagnostic value. Often, if a child options are confusing, it will bring out the real concept within a child. Even if the distractors are confusing, because he needs to have thorough understanding of the concept and demonstrate that.
And one of the most important, objective of any assessment is to differentiate between, good student or the student who is having the good understanding of the concept from the one who possess only the superficial understanding of the concept. If a student, there is a rare chance for a student to, confuse with the, distractors. So if a student is able to solve it, very rarely it happens that he chooses the wrong answer because of the, similar distractors. So as our aim is to differentiate also among between students. So I think MCQs are good choice.
Thank you so much, everyone on the panel. With this, we will close out this session. We would want to thank all the panelists who took out their time in helping and sharing their experiences. Subhasha, may I please request you to share a few lines as your closing remarks?
Okay. Thank you very much, Ashwin. It is very encouraging that thousands of teachers are watching this webinar carefully on YouTube. Thank you very much for your keen interest. First, here is an announcement for all of our teachers participants. There is a Google form link available in the description box, which is below your YouTube screen. It is a feedback form come an opportunity form. Those who are interested to become our team item developer, they can submit 1 or 2 sample items through the link, through the same link. These items will be developed for classes 3, 5, 8, 9th to 12th. The shortlisted teachers will be given training and will be part of the CBSE team. Please ensure that the sample items you submit should be your bona fide work. Do not copy from any book, etc. The link will be available on YouTube even after the webinar. Thank you once again. As we approach the end of this event, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Chairman, Sir, Mr. Manoj Ahuja ji, for being a pillar of the strength for the entire team. Without his support, we would not have gone that extra mile. A big thank you to our Director Academic, Mr. Joseph Emmanuel, and Joint Secretary, Mr. Alilal Ahmed, for making this event possible and his presence. And a special thanks to our panelists, Mr. Maulik Shah and Mr. Rahul Sofat, for gracing us with their in-depth knowledge and guiding all the attendees to make better multiple choice questions. I'm sure all of us learned a lot of new things today and will implement them in making much better questions to our students. Thank you to our IT team for their technical support and all the organizers for shaping and organizing this event. I thank all of you for being a patient and focusing on the goal that mattered the most. I hope that whatever knowledge you have gained today will be passed on further by all the attendees to colleagues and our other teachers, giving all of us an opportunity to improve. Wish you a great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With this, we close this webinar. We had great fun running this session for you. If you want to rewatch this, you can always come back to CBSE's YouTube channel and watch it again. Thank you so much and have a good evening.